Come on, aliens, step the fuck up.
Eavesdroppin.
Oh, there she is, resplendent, ladies and gentlemen, in her terry toweling robe. And it looks like it's had a nice wash, Michelle.
It's always clean and freshly laundered. How dare you? You make me out to be some kind of dirty bitch in a robe. What will people think of me?
That you're sitting there in a grey shabby robe all the time, day and night?
Do you know what? I used to have a grey shabby robe. It was so wonderful that after many washings, it doesn't stay white. You know, they do go a little grey. They do. But this one is so synthetic, so artificial that it doesn't pick up the grey. It stays shiny white, ready to be inflamed by a match.
In case you've just joined us, this is Michelle's recording robe. And yes, you are tuned in to Eavesdroppin, the weekly comedy storytelling podcast that covers everything from real life, true crime and supernatural. It's not an audio version of TVC.
What?
Is it called TVC?
I don't know what TVC is.
The television channel where they... What's it where, you know, our friend works? We've got a friend who works at
QVC.
QVC. Oh, I fucking forgot the words again. I forgot my bloody postcode today.
You didn't.
I did.
Get back on those mushrooms, lady.
I am on the mushrooms, woman. Don't tell me what to do.
Up that dosage.
I'm going to have to up it. Do you know what? Back to mushrooms for one moment. I know we've done 100 different segues just now and we're on Tangent City. We're stringing it along with tangents. But that tincture I said that my husband makes with all the lion's mane and ginseng, it's made of vodka. So I'm basically having like a shot of vodka in my coffee every morning before I go to work.
He's getting you drunk. That's why the world is so fun these days. You're like, I'm drunk. But, you know, pure alcohol, there's nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with it. I say that every night, Michelle. Look, I'm on the red wine right now.
Is that what you're drinking there? You're on the red, glass of red. I've had, well, actually, I had champs today and...
God, show off.
A glass of white.
Okay, well, that's not mixing it up too much, I suppose.
No, and then I have to say, I'm finding the white is messing with my complexion these days. I'm getting flushed by the white wine. I think it could...
AKA drunk. No? Isn't that what other people call it?
Yeah, maybe that is just what it is. But also, going back very briefly to the mushrooms, you gave me some mushroom gummies.
Oh, I did, yeah. How did they go? They weren't cutting it for me.
I think I'm getting a hit off them. I do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Popping a mushroom gummy before I do a shift at work. And
I thought you were going to say something else for a minute then.
A shift without the F? Is that what you thought I was going to say?
Yes, I did.
Look, I'm flying, so I'm going to have to place an order.
Oh, God, you lucky thing.
Well, it's because I haven't, built up any tolerance to it. So I'm a fresh, mushy advocate, I guess. So,
whereas I've been mushy loading for years now, so I'm probably just a walking, talking lump of fungus. Michelle, I haven't introduced myself.
Have we not done that yet? Oh,
no.
My God.
I'm Geordie.
And I am Michelle. And as she said earlier...
Together?
Yeah, together we are Eavesdroppin the podcast.
That's the one. Welcome. I know it feels like you've just walked into a bar where there's a couple of drunk ladies just holding court and you'd love to be in on the conversation, but unfortunately you've missed the first half and you don't know what they're talking about. Apologies if that's you.
I think that sounds like our poor cab driver. And for anyone who's been on the Patreon, they know what we're talking about because we posted this video of us on a drunk girls' night out. That poor cabbie had no clue.
You went on like that for hours.
I did.
It was a long ride.
Oops.
Yeah. Oops. But... there are people that do like this podcast, and I was going to ask them very kindly, because a lot of them do sign up to our Patreon, which is fantastic for us, and we love that. It's almost like you're helping us to get better and to love what we do a bit more, because obviously we're getting something for it, and that's your love and attention and your cash. And I love that. Don't you, Michelle?
Yes.
I do.
We love it.
But we need something else from you. Can we ask a favour? Would you please go on to whatever platform you are listening to this podcast on right now, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and write us a bloody review, please.
And rate us. Give us 5 stars.
Right. All the way up to 5.
All the way. Crank
Don't give us a
that
4.
up. No.
If you want to give us a 4, that's fine, but not a 2 or a 1. That's no good.
No. We like the 5s. We'll take a 4, but we like the 5s.
Yes. Thank you. That's just one thing you can do today. Do it right now while you're fiddling about listening to this podcast, if you wouldn't mind.
Put down that Hoover.
Put it down. Put down that sandwich.
Take off those marigolds and just give us a little 5-star.
Put down that operating equipment, because some of you may be doing your work right now. Some of you may be doing open heart surgery. Listen, I've got some news. It's come off the social medias,
What?
Michelle.
Who's following us?
Lots of people, not Keanu, not Stuart Copeland this time, not Elon Musk. I don't think anymore. I think he's gone on to better and bigger things. We had a comment from, and this is on the Instagram, by the way, it's called Eavesdroppin _. So go and have a look on your Instagram and follow us because you'll get a treat. We had a comment from a lady called Belinda Chap. I wonder if she's related to Charlene Chapman. Happy Chappy. She said the filming for, and I believe this is what she's talking about, the filming for the Charlize thing that we talked about last week, Charlize Theron, in Canberra, in Australia, the capital city, was actually out past West Belconnen in Ginninderra Falls. Doesn't that sound lovely? And Belinda loves our show, and I promised her a shout out, and here it is, Belinda. Thank you. We love you. Shout out. Shout out.
You're getting a shout out. Yes, thank you so much, Belinda, for enlightening us. I had done a little research and also seen Charlize was in Belco. Who knew Belco?
I went to Lake Ginninderra College the first year it opened, by the way. There was only an intake for year 11. I was one of them. For a term, till I got kicked out, sent to the naughty person's school across town.
I wish I'd known about that, but I never even knew Narrabundah existed.
Well, you wouldn't go there because it was too far.
I know, it would have been at least 2 buses. Apparently Eric Banner is also in this with Charlize.
Is he?
Yes, this is what I read.
Oh, I had a little chitty chat with Charlene the other day after she listened to last week's episode because we mentioned Silent Witness. And she said that she once saw Nikki from Silent Witness at a comedy club where Nikki's boyfriend, or the actress Amelia, what's her name? Amelia Fox, where her boyfriend was doing a set. And I said, did you talk to her? She said, no, she was too polite to do that. So she just gave her a nod as she was walking out the door, which I love the idea of. She's very respectful, Charlene. Very respectful.
Is. Well, I'm a bit bummed because we've had bloody celebs coming out of our asshole here.
Have we?
And I've missed, here where I am, and I've missed them all. Oh. So we've had Chris Hemsworth, who had his photo taken with my friend's dog.
Oh.
And my friend also had her photo taken because not only was the one and only Jodie Foster up there having a sandwich.
God.
I know.
Having a sandwich.
Missed them all.
What a shame. I'll be giving away where I live now, but we only have Janine from EastEnders.
That's all right. Any hole's a goal.
There are a few others. In fact, I think that, what's his name? Nikki's husband now in Silent Witness lives up the road in another southwest London suburb or satellite town / Surrey. Anyway, moving on.
Well, I was going to say, dear eavesdroppers, do write in and tell us your best celebrity spot.
That's it. Thank you for reminding me of what I was going to say, Michelle. I got lost again in another bloody tangent. But yes, tell us your best celebrity spots. Do you know what? I've just remembered a couple of mine. When I used to work in fashion, I had a couple of jobs, like one of them in particular on Sloane Street opposite Harvey Nichols is where I saw the best ones in a shop called Shanghai Tang. While I was on the floor working, I bumped into Jimmy Barnes. He said hello to me. And I didn't know because I haven't lived in Australia for years and he was very grey and different to what I remembered. I only thought of it because I was listening to some Cold Chisel the other day. What?
The best song. Oh, Flame Trees.
Well, I don't even recognise that song.
Flame trees. I have new appreciation for cold chisel as I get older. When I was younger, my older sister, we were listening to the Sundays and my sister was listening to cold chisel. She was a bit of a Westie, we would call them in Canberra.
Oh,
bit of a bogan.
Boona.
I have a new appreciation for cold chisel, and I'm telling you, if you go back and watch some of the early cold chisel videos, Jimmy Barnes is fucking hot.
Is he though?
And I never thought I would say that.
I'm not sure about that, but I'm just going to say one more thing about your sister. She is going to bloody love you, Michelle, because not only have you outed her as a Celine Dion fan, but you've also outed her as a Westie or a Bogan or a Boona.
I'm going to have to make a clarification here. The Celine Dion fan is a different sister to the Boona.
Oh, okay.
I got two.
It's the other one. Fair enough.
The other one.
All right. So let me tell you about Shari. This is a good one. Okay, because Shari said she's finally manned up, or womaned up actually, and started listening to an old episode that she couldn't listen to previously because of a phobia that she had. I know she couldn't listen to the animal one either, the one about the Streatham cat killer. A lot of people can't listen to that, and fair enough, because Michelle's accompanying story about the Piggy Palace is also quite grotesque. Those were the days when we didn't care. We were a bit more loosey-goosey when it came to all the horror.
I've still got some horror ones that I've got up my sleeve for if we ever decide to go hardcore
right
again.
Let us know. But
do you know what? We should have a poll.
Yeah.
If you want to hear a couple of hardcore murder stories, let us know.
But going back to Shari and her phobia, she had a phobia that she may spontaneously combust. And we had done stories on spontaneous human combustion in the past, and she couldn't listen to it because the fear was real. And I get it, Shari. I'm not making fun of you, not one bit, because she's now confronting that fear. Very good for you.
Yeah.
A bit of exposure therapy. And she did, after listening, I think, said to me in her message, her voice note, how come if spontaneous human combustion is a thing, why don't you, me or her or any of our friends know anybody who has combusted?
Yes.
Is it because it's bullshit? Probably.
Look, there is something in that. I also think after The Secret came out, where we all know about manifesting and what you think you bring, you attract. So I understand Shari's fear here. It's like, if I think about spontaneous combustion and I listen to an episode on spontaneous combustion, am I bringing spontaneous combustion? Am I manifesting it into my existence?
I don't think that's what she meant. I think it was just that she didn't think she could handle listening to stories where people did spontaneously combust. I want to say something about that manifestation technique. You are allowed to think negative thoughts, everybody. Please do it. It's allowed, because you can't have the light without the shade. And if you lock away negative thoughts, they are only going to fester. They're not going anywhere. Okay. And thinking about cancer, thinking about spontaneous human combustion and other dark things is not going to make it happen. That is magical thinking. End of sentence.
Okay, we'll park that. But Shari, very proud of you for confronting a phobia.
So proud.
You could be right. Maybe the whole spontaneous combustion thing is a crock of shit.
Well, you thought so, Michelle.
I mean, how is it even possible?
From memory, you didn't think it was real.
It just seems a bit Muppets. Do you remember there was a Muppet that spontaneously combusted? And he would spontaneously combust.
That was Animal, and he was pressing a bomb.
Okay. Maybe I got it wrong. I'm misremembering.
Oh, God. Now, listen, Michelle, we are getting away from ourselves here because I have got such a story to tell you right now.
I'm excited. I have no clue what you're going to tell me.
Well, as you know, we did say we're going to talk about UFOs again because that's a never-ending rich seam and source of info. I found something in this month's Fortean Times. It was the feature article of this month's Fortean, which is, I guess, March 2025. And it is the story of the Pascagoula abduction from Mississippi in 1973. Whoa. Yes, I know. We did it before.
Yes.
In fact, I told you and the eavesdroppers about this in our 101st episode, Michelle. which you will put a link to. It was episode 36, season 3, in case you were wondering. That's 2020.
22.
I can't remember. Who knows? We talked about Roswell. You talked about Roswell, actually, because it was the 75th birthday of that. Plus Jesse Marcel, who apparently senior, who took debris from the crash site at Roswell. Then I told you about the Pascagoula incident. But to be honest, Michelle, I only glossed over it. We talked a lot about how the aliens look, which I'll go into later. I also told you other early abduction stories like Betty and Barney Hill, Antonia Villas Boas, and how most aliens seem to be about your height, 5 foot tall. Yet still they can overpower all these people. And I also mentioned, with slight suspicion, a man who you mentioned in that story back on the 101st episode. And then I picked up on him because he was in mine as well. He's across most UFO stories, actually, and he's been mentioned many times on this podcast. His name is Philip Mantle. Philip is a British UFO researcher, lecturer, and more importantly, publisher of his own Flying Disc publishing house. So Philip's bread and butter, you could say, is the public's interest in UFOs and abduction stories. Hence, perhaps, my suspicion.
Okay.
He wrote this article where I got the information in the March edition of the Fortean Times this year, 2025. And after reading it, Michelle, I got to say, this guy's research is quite in-depth and relentless. And if it wasn't for him, I don't think that we'd know a lot of the stuff I'm about to tell you. And I think you'll agree, Michelle and listeners, this is fascinating and thought-provoking stuff.
Lay it on me.
I got right into this story, and I hope I don't get freaked out again like I did last week, because I'm in the dark room. So for those who don't know, and as a reminder for you, Michelle, because I know you have difficulty retaining information, no shade, same for me, here's a rundown of the incident. The Pascagoula incident occurred on the night of October 11, 1973, when shipyard co-workers Calvin Parker, aged 19, and Charlie Hickson, aged 42, were fishing on the banks of the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. The men claimed a football-shaped glowing blue craft suddenly appeared and 3 strange humanoid creatures emerged. They were described as having a robotic look about them, wrinkled grey skin like an elephant, carrot-like noses and ears, slit-like mouths, clawed hands like a lobster, but no visible eyes. And at this point in the 101st podcast episode, I think I suggested that maybe those men were having a hunger dream, because there was a lot of food references when describing these creatures. Parker and Hickson were paralyzed and floated onto the craft, which is so far so very normal for most abductee stories, right? A lot of floating, a lot of bodies being controlled, a lot of, suddenly we appear on a craft. And then they underwent a bizarre medical examination. The only thing that I found very different about this story when I heard it before was the description of the aliens. It was nothing like we've ever heard before.
No. The fact that there's no eyes, normally people talk about
no neck
glowing
as well.
eyes, no neck. Yeah. And the wrinkly elephant skin. I was thinking this sounds like a cross between a snowman and a scarecrow.
Oh.
Kind of weird. I think it was the carrot nose.
That's made me scared. You just made me scared. Well done. Well done, Michelle. Now I'm freaked out. I hope I don't start screaming again. So Hickson described being scanned while undergoing this examination, being scanned by a large robotic eye, while Calvin Parker, who was terrified, claimed to have blacked out during the whole thing. Pin that.
Okay.
After they were released, they reported the incident to the police. And something that I didn't mention previously in the 101st episode was that the police, after questioning them for hours separately, then secretly recorded the men chatting together, thinking they might relax and speak more honestly and give up the game, so to speak. But the tape showed the men were still talking in hushed, terrified tones, which investigators took as being a sign that they were still telling the truth.
Yeah, of course. They were fucking scared.
The case drew attention from UFO researchers such as J. Allen Hynek of Project Blue Book fame, and in the last episode we spoke about this. We went on and on about the fact that he was Aidan Gillen in the TV series, and Dr. James Harder, who both interviewed the men and subjected them to hypnosis and lie detector tests. The Pascagoula incident remains one of the most compelling and well-documented UFO abduction cases in history, Michelle. But when Charlie Hickson died at age 80 in 2011, and Calvin Parker has since died in 2023 after our last foray into this story, Philip Mantle, before Calvin's death, tracked him down and they had a few chats. And in fact, in the article that Philip wrote in the Fortean Times, he said they became quite good friends despite only ever meeting on Skype. And here's a bit more information about the abduction itself, because these two men wrote a book together, by the way, which I'll come back to. You actually put a link in it in the last episode. The abduction went a little like this, which I didn't tell you before. While fishing, the men heard a whirring, whizzing sound, followed by flashing blue lights. Then a craft appeared. It was about 8 foot by 20 foot high, which is about 2.5 meters by 6 meters, roughly the size of a British dining room. Shaped like a football, though, and I'm assuming that's an American one. Mm-hmm. The ship was hovering just off the ground, about 60 centimeters or 2 feet, when a door opened and out floated these 3 creatures, as I told you earlier, what they looked like, the weird elephant skin, the carrots all over their faces. Hickson and Parker were captured and floated onto the craft while being paralyzed and numb. They were overwhelmed with fear, particularly the younger man, Calvin Parker, who, like I said, is only 19. Charlie Hickson, who was 42, had been in the Korean War and had a bit more previous trauma under his belt. Mm-hmm. But he was terrified all the same. And as I mentioned, Charlie was awake throughout the whole ordeal, but Calvin apparently passed out. So these weird robotic-like creatures, they must have made quite a shocking sight for these guys. And Charlie Hickson's account of what happened on the craft was that a large football-shaped mechanical eye scanned his body while he was levitating. The whole thing seemed to go on for about half an hour. Then they were released via levitation back to their original places on the riverbank, but Charlie remembers his feet were dragging along the ground as he was being levitated back to his spot.
Right.
For some reason, that's really interesting to me. Afterwards, the terrified men sat in their car for about 45 minutes trying to process what had just happened to them, and Charlie, the older guy, poured himself a whiskey. They also noticed that their car had been damaged, but couldn't figure out how. Around 10:30 p.m., they arrived at the Jackson County Police Station, reported their experience to Sheriff Fred Diamond. They had the catfish that they'd caught that night as well to prove that they had been fishing like they said they'd been.
Yeah.
But the sheriff was understandably dubious. However, he did acknowledge that these men appeared shaken and frightened.
Yes.
They both offered to take lie detector tests as well.
I mean, I wonder, are these burly dudes who normally you would think they're skeptics?
They worked in a shipyard, yeah. I would say they were kind of burly dudes.
Yeah.
And they definitely had never seen or experienced anything like this before, especially young Calvin. Like I said before, the police secretly taped them. Calvin was really shaken up and he was desperate to go home. And in the recording, he's talking about taking some nerve pills and feeling like he's losing his mind.
Yeah.
There's a transcript in the article that I read. And he tells Charlie how he couldn't feel his arms during the experience. This is on the tape. And it was like he'd stepped on a damn rattlesnake. They also discussed how the door came right up and they couldn't figure out how that had happened. Charlie's response is more geared towards how the authorities might be viewing and the public might view their story. And he knows it seems really far-fetched. So he says things like, they better wake up and start believing.
Yeah.
Now, the police were aware that Charlie had had a drink and they suspected he might be drunk and just talking bullshit. But Calvin was a teetotal and he was sober at the time.
Yeah.
In the aftermath, Charlie was worried that he'd been subjected to high levels of radiation. So the company that they worked for arranged for their attorney to get him tested at the local military base. They ran a lot of tests, but found nothing untoward. And at this point, like 3 days later, I think it was, UFO researchers Dr. James A. Harder and Dr. J. Allen Hynek came on board. Hynek's work at Blue Book had finished, but the men interviewed these abductees extensively, with Dr. Harder trying, but not actually managing, to hypnotize them because they were just in too much of a state at the time.
Put yourself in their shoes.
I don't want to, but yeah, I know.
I don't know how I would mentally process something like this. It's so out of the realm of anything that you can frame. It's too much.
They weren't sleeping. They were so upset.
Of course.
Really, it was awful. Hynek, after doing all his questioning for however long they were there for, declined to make a judgment on whether or not what they were saying was true. But he did say, in his opinion, they were honest men who believed what they were saying.
Yes.
After all this, the media is now involved. The pair hated the attention. They skipped town to recover, and poor Calvin ended up in the hospital with an emotional breakdown.
Yep.
Over the years, Charlie Hickson wrote a book called UFO Contact at Pascagoula in 1983, and he was on TV a lot, giving interviews. He didn't mind talking about it. But the more emotionally affected Calvin Parker kept himself out of the spotlight. But once Philip Mantle got in touch with Calvin, he decided it was time to tell his side of the story, Michelle. And this is where the new information comes to light. And it's quite revealing.
I find that really fantastic that somebody managed to get this guy to open up, especially as he's probably, in his 70s or 80s now? Obviously, he's passed away just recently.
Yeah, but he would have been older, yeah. So Calvin and Philip Mantle wrote a book called, that's what it was, Pascagoula, The Closest Encounter. It was obviously put out in flying disc, and it was written in 2018. And in this book, there's Calvin's full disclosure. Because you see, Michelle, he didn't really pass out. Like Charlie, he was awake and aware throughout the ordeal, but due to his delicate emotional state, both men decided it was better to say he'd passed out and had no recollection so that he would not be subjected to intense scrutiny.
He couldn't handle it.
He couldn't handle it. So Calvin's recollections are similar to Charlie's, except for the presence of a female, almost human-looking humanoid who was there when he was being examined. She was conducting the exam on him and inserted a tube in his foot, which hurt. And as I told you in the earlier podcast, all of Calvin's paperwork relating to the incident was destroyed in Hurricane Katrina, but Philip Mantle, he's got contacts. He's got them all over the joint. He's got them in Hynek's office plus other UFO researchers, and he was able to pull everything he could to provide more info for the book. And one amazing bit of information was courtesy of the J. Allen Hynek Center for UFO Studies in the United States, and also the Center for UFO Studies, which had documents and photos from 3 days after the abduction of puncture wounds and small circular wounds where skin had been removed from both men that tallied with their experiences of being examined by the aliens.
No.
Huh?
Oh my God.
And this is where it gets kind of crazy, Michelle, because after Calvin and Philip's book was released, many more eyewitness testimonies came forward from Pascagoula from that night and around the weeks before, the days after, all saying they'd seen lights and the ship that these men had seen on the 11th of October, 1973. And 30 of the witnesses were interviewed by Philip Mantle and his colleague, Dr. Irena Scott. Now, around the time when they were giving interviews, Calvin appeared on an interview that was posted up on YouTube. Somebody saw it and commented. This commenter said that her parents had been at the Pascagoula River that night and had always told her and her sister about the weird blue lights that they saw, but never told anyone else. So somebody got in touch with this girl, and that's how they gained access to Jerry and Maria Blair, who were, in 1973, a newlywed married couple who had pulled up to the east side of the river that night on the opposite side as Calvin and Charlie in their car to wait for Jerry's boss, who was taking him to a job offshore. While they waited, Jerry nodded off, and that's when Maria said she saw blue lights that she thought was a helicopter or a plane that was lost because it was darting back and forth. Jerry then woke up and decided to load his gear onto the boat, despite the fact his boss still hadn't arrived. So he asked Maria to join him in the short walk down to the pier, which was dark. And this is around 9 p.m. While walking down, Maria said they heard a big splash in the river beside her on her side of the pier, like something had fallen in the water.
Okay.
She then said she saw something emerge, and it looked like a grey man. And then it submerged again. I know. She told Jerry what she saw. He dismissed it.
Well, it sounds fantastical.
Yeah. He just said, no, you didn't see anything. That's ridiculous. Then Maria said she was waiting for that person who she thought had gone underwater to come back up for air. And when the water rippled, she told Jerry again. He said, no, there's nothing there. Don't be silly. Maria thought nothing more of this until the next day when the reports of the Pascagoula abduction came out, and she realised it was around the same time and the opposite side of the pier as them. Probably too far for them to have spotted Calvin and Charlie, though. Yet Maria stayed silent for 45 years, apart from telling their daughters. Jerry always insisted that people would think they were crazy and encouraged Maria to keep stum about this. Then in September 2019, Maria finally contacted Philip Mantle and Calvin Parker. She was calling from the hospital where Jerry was about to have an operation, and he was keen to get something off his chest, Michelle.
Oh, no. I've got shivers.
I know, this is shiver making. Jerry told Maria what he saw that night. And yes, he did see a grey humanoid in the water. And yes, he did see blue lights. But Jerry also remembers being abducted by grey beings who went up a bit in height from what we've been told. They were actually more like 6 foot. And that, in his words, he saw them, but he didn't want to see them.
Yep.
He was levitated into the ship and subjected to examinations before being returned to the pier, and he watched as the beings floated back across the river and the craft shot up and away. Jerry sadly died shortly after this confession, and God. Maria didn't remember any of this, but when the suggestion of hypnosis was raised, she wasn't yet ready. She was still mourning the loss of Jerry.
Yeah, of course.
So it took a couple of years, but when she did finally get back in touch with Philip, he had an independent hypnotist who knew nothing about this, the Pascagoula, or anything to do with it when she was brought in to work with Maria in 2022 and took her back to the night of October 1973. Once under, Maria was immediately confused and scared and wanted to find Jerry. She didn't know where he was. She said she felt like she was floating in the air and felt that something was controlling her mind and body. She was taken through a door and sedated. She saw beings floating around and was laid on a metal table with a thin metal object hovering over her lady bits. She said she thought they were interested in her DNA and her eggs. And she said it wasn't painful. The machine was just collecting information, but she was terrified.
Fuck, man. I'd be fucking scared.
I know.
It's awful.
When the hypnotist asked what the beings wanted, Maria said their goal was to make children look like people so they could roam the earth and walk among us. And that their ultimate mission was to help mankind, which is comforting, I suppose. Then she was back at the pier and she felt that they were in a hurry to leave. The hypnotist then asked if there was anything else, and Maria replied that the beings had made an agreement with Jerry not to let her know what had happened. She also revealed under hypnosis that she felt Jerry had been aware of the beings before that night. She now understood why he said what he said when he said he'd seen them but didn't want to see them. She felt that he had already experienced this before. And at this point, she's crying. And she's under hypnosis still, but she says she felt he already knew that they were going to take her and attack her.
What?
With her words. I know. The hypnotist asked, why her? And Maria replied that it was because she was a woman and that it was about life, possibly evolution. She then added, they are among us now. They have people that drive cars. They are humanoids that drive cars. They look like that. They aren't real. The beings are here. They are trying to disguise themselves as people, and they are all over the planet. I'm thinking, Michelle, that we had a lucky escape that night in the Uber, because maybe that's what's going on. I mean, what would they make of 27 seconds of whoops, I wonder? We were spared that night.
We were spared. We were lucky.
Thank God we were so pissed.
Thank God, because how pissed were we? Were we pissed enough?
Are we going to have to go under hypnosis?
He could actually have blacked us out, and under hypnosis, they took our eggs.
You did say to me the next morning that it was really late when we got back.
It was much later than I thought it was.
Michelle, we were abducted by one of the Uber drivers.
Geordie, honestly, I thought there was like an hour of lost time.
Fuck.
Not joking.
We need to get hypnotized back to that night.
Shall we do it?
I think we should.
Oh my God. That bloody Uber driver. Have we got his name?
I'll find it somewhere. Listen, Calvin and Charlie are both now gone. But Philip Mantle continues to unearth more information regarding Pascagoula in the form of documents and drawings of a ship made by Charlie. He did a drawing. I also discovered that Charlie had a second encounter in 1993. He said he was contacted telepathically by the same aliens as his original encounter. He described hearing a voice in his head telling him that they were peaceful and meant no harm. Yeah, you would say that though, wouldn't you? During this encounter, the beings transmitted knowledge to him, reassuring him that humanity was being observed and that their visits were part of a long-term plan. Charlie Hickson claimed they told him that he had been chosen for a reason, though he never fully understood why. And he didn't report this abduction because it wasn't physical, it was just mental. But it did leave him shaken and convinced that they were still watching him. And until his death in 2011, Charlie reiterated that he had no reason to lie and he only wanted to share what he experienced.
And he's quite right.
Quite right.
What has that guy got to gain?
Well, it was on TV and there was a book. I think I did point that out last time.
Okay, well.
There was that. And we don't know the full story, but we know what Philip Mantle wants to tell us.
Yes.
And I have to say, Michelle, for all my, what would you call me?
Skepticism?
Skeptics? Yeah, skepticisms. I would say that this is the one that I've heard now that has finally kind of got me thinking.
What are you thinking?
Well, I am now thinking that perhaps there's something in that. I do now think that maybe Uber drivers are aliens. No, I'm joking. I actually do think that perhaps these people did experience that. It's got me questioning a lot of things. Because I've always said, why would aliens be interested in humans? Number one. And two, why do we think they're going to look like us? That's just so vain. And I know that those elephant foot things don't look like us.
No, they don't.
But I'm talking like a thought or a nanobot or something.
Well, what they're saying is a
tardigrade.
They are abducting us and particularly interested in the reproductive element of humans.
Merging with us.
Yes, to walk among us.
That they're already here.
Do you think you know any aliens?
Yeah.
I know some pretty weird people, so I don't know. Could they be? And would we ever know? Would we ever know? Are they ever going to reveal?
Well, I wonder if DNA testing would reveal it. Now I feel like we're doing magical thinking.
Well, I'm just throwing possibilities out there. I'm not saying I believe it. I'm just saying if that happened, if what they're saying is true and there are aliens among us, and look, these people are not the first one to posit this theory that aliens walk among us. You know, people say this all the time.
Queen's a lizard, etc.
All of that stuff. And, you know, we joke about it, we poo-poo it. But if there was something in that, how would we know? We don't know. If they're smart enough to have all of these bloody amazing spacecraft and technologies and float people and do all of this stuff, they're smarter than us.
So what do you make of the "we're just here to help" trope?
I think that that's a nice way to disarm people. We're just here to help. We're just here to help
Don't worry.
you.
We're just here to really scare the shit out of you, take some of your eggs and integrate into your race for, for really altruistic reasons.
If that was true.
Because we just like to help.
If that was true, they would have fucking already, sorted the energy crisis. Come on, aliens, step the fuck up.
If we've ever needed them, we need them now. For God's sake, step up.
Wow. Do you know what, Geordie? It's super fascinating. I'm not saying I think they walk among us. I'm just thinking, if they did, would we even know? Are you an alien?
I could be.
Could I be an alien?
You could be.
You just wouldn't. You could do.
You're 5 feet tall for a start. Let's do a DNA test on you.
And I'm telling you, the older I get, the more I'm getting the elephant skin.
Yeah, and there's all those carrots coming out your ears and your nose.
It's just one of those things to think about. It's kind of a fun thing to think about, but also I don't want to think about it too much because if it's fucking scary, that bloody Uber driver.
Yeah. We never saw his face, Michelle.
We didn't. He had no face. It's like a David Lynch film. He turned his head and there was no face, no face, no face.
Poor man.
What happened last night? Was it a visit from an alien? There was an alien probe. Did he take me away in his super ship? What an alien! What an alien!
I don't have a story for you. I've got a little bit of a bits of this, bits of that.
Fair enough.
Looking at various bits of news. Ended up down a bit of a rabbit hole of all different things. So, apologies. But I'm going to start with, did you know that there's actually a UFO Con festival?
Yeah.
Called Contact in the Desert?
Yeah, because we've talked about that before.
Okay.
In that episode we spoke about.
Yeah, I forgot. Obviously, I forgot about it.
So you're not doing a search when you go back into our website?
No, because I know that we haven't done a whole episode on Contact in the Desert.
But we did talk about it. There was something weird that happened to the woman who organised it. There was something untoward.
Oh, really?
Yes, from memory.
Okay. Well, it's been going since 2013, so not that long, really.
Yeah.
It's basically the ultimate UFO fan fest. It happens every year. People all over the world gather in California at a place called Indian Wells near Palm Springs. It's kind of a fancy resort and they all just get together and talk about, aliens and government secrets and ancient civilizations and UFOs and all that kind of stuff. But it's not like being at uni where you sit through lectures. I looked up the lineup. And this year's experts, there are former military insiders.
Great.
Investigative journalists.
Oh, that's what you want. Philip Mantle. I bet he's there.
I don't know, but I tell you who is there.
Who?
Whitley Strieber.
Oh, Whitley.
He's there. Josh Gates is the keynote, who is apparently some TV personality who has a show called Expedition Unknown.
Put that on the DVR.
There's also George Knapp, who we have talked about.
Yes.
He's a journalist that has worked a lot with Jeremy Corbell.
Okay.
And there's also Paul Hynek, son of Alan Hynek. Yes, who we just talked about, all that Project Blue Book fame. Loads more people I don't know. And there's also things like hands-on workshops.
Hands-on?
I don't know what that means.
What are you getting your hands on, Michelle?
I don't know. A carrot? I really don't know. But there are deep dive discussions. There's late night sky watching sessions where you go out and look up in the California night sky looking
That's
for
fun.
things. Yes. So I just thought I'd pop that out there for any eavesdroppers out there that live in California.
I bet those skies are vast as well, aren't they?
California desert, amazing. And I think, Geordie, if we were rich ladies of leisure, I would drag you along to check this out because it's at a place called the Esmeralda Resort. It has a gorgeous pool area. I bet they do good cocktails.
I'm here for the pool and the cocktails.
Yes, and maybe a little bit of night sky watching.
Come for the UFOs, stay for the pool and the cocktails.
Yes. So I'm not being paid to promote this because I have no idea if this is any good. Give them a heads up. Maybe they can
pay for us to come out there.
Yeah, put us on the guest list. This year's event is May 29 to June 2, so we're not going to make that. But maybe next year. Now, I also, in my deep dive into all the newsy things, obviously we have talked a lot about military planes having close calls with UFOs on this podcast.
All right, yes, the tic-tac and all that.
Well, there's another one that's hit the headlines. This one went kind of crazy online on the 20th of February 2025. And it's actually about an incident that happened on September 17, 2024. So apparently there's an audio recording of a US Air Force pilot's voice as he is kind of in real time while he's flying, reporting a close encounter with a UFO. That recording, as far as I could tell, is not out there to be heard. So any of our amazing eavesdroppers who have even a better subscription to the dark web than me, send it because I'd love to hear it.
We know you're out there.
We do know you're out there secretly listening. So this pilot is a guy who goes by the call sign of Troy 21. So he's military. He is hurtling through the sky at supersonic speeds, try saying that with braces, on a top secret mission over California when he spots 10 feet away from the plane a UFO. 10 feet is fucking nothing when you are going at supersonic speeds.
So he must have had a really good view of this UFO.
Yes. And it's, his radars are going crazy. So in a radio call to the Los Angeles Air Traffic Control, he says, and this is a quote, "This is going to sound weird.
It's only 3 meters, Michelle.
It's fuck all from your plane. It's nothing. Nothing. He could reach out and touch that UFO."
Yep.
He says, quote, "This is going to sound weird, but I just had something pass underneath my wing. Maybe a football-sized object right underneath my wing."
Oh, here's that football again.
Yes. So the air traffic control...
Football-sized?
So it's small. It's small.
Wow.
So the air traffic controller is heard, apparently, asking Troy 21 if he thought the object could be a drone. But the pilot says he didn't know, and he says his sensor operator was looking for the UFO on the plane's cameras. He then said it was dark grey cylindrical object, no bigger than a football. Troy 21 also said the UFO was seen again about 60 miles from where it first buzzed his plane, but apparently later in the recording, another air traffic controller in Los Angeles can be heard dismissing the whole thing, saying, there was a UFO reporter here, but that's all taken care of now, so you don't have to worry about it. It's gone.
maybe he got abducted and made an agreement with those aliens not to say anything.
Who knows? But there's a former FBI agent called Ben Hansen, and I feel like we know that name. I feel like maybe we've talked about him before. Okay. He told News Nation he reckons that the UFO must have been travelling at Mach 2, which is AKA twice the speed of sound, to get so far away so fast. So he's like, not a drone.
So a drone can't do that. Yeah, exactly.
Not a drone. And he says, quote, "It's broad daylight. They got a good look at this thing, a cylindrical dark object that passes underneath their wings so close. There's big problems with that happening in controlled airspace like they were in, and they were not notified of any air traffic that was supposed to be in that area." Essentially, they're in controlled airspace. They were not alerted to anything else that's meant to be out there, and it's broad daylight. You know, so what the hell is going on here? And apparently the UFO was spotted near a military operations area, but not in the military operations area.
Right.
Meaning anyone flying a commercial drone would have had to report their activity. And there were no reports of any drone activity that day.
I see.
So this leads me directly to my next bits of news, which is this whole hoo-ha around Florida Congresswoman Paulina Luna. Again, I feel like we've talked about her too.
I don't think that's familiar.
Okay, maybe I've read about her
somewhere else
during all of the declassified stuff.
Oh, maybe.
But she had a classified meeting with Air Force whistleblowers and private briefings.
Oh.
And then she went on a podcast. Just going to lay it out there. I did not listen to this podcast before doing this podcast. Just did not have time. Sorry, guys, but I'll put a link to it. She went on a podcast called the Grant Mitt Podcast. Have you heard of it?
No.
Me either. She went on there to say that the UFOs, these military whistleblowers, in her opinion, are definitely from outer space.
Huh.
So Paulina Luna is a member of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, which has been looking at and investigating claims about UFOs.
Yeah.
And she has also been apparently involved in historic hearings with military whistleblowers.
All right.
So if you were a whistleblower in 1973, for example, you're going to get a call from Paulina Luna. That's the job she's been tasked with by the government. And after hearing what these Air Force whistleblowers have to say, she, quote, absolutely believes that the aircrafts that they and others have described are of non-human origin. She also goes on to say that she personally got, quote, men in blacked.
Oh.
Yeah. First by officials from the Pentagon who tried to cancel all her meetings at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida with these whistleblowers because apparently pilots at Eglin had come forward to say that the Air Force was covering up UAP activity and that Congress needed to look into it. And then Paulina Luna said that CIA agents, first of all, tried to cancel her meetings, block her contact with these pilots, and that then when they couldn't cancel her meetings, they were shadowing her. And that the meetings she did have with these Air Force whistleblowers, when she got there to Eglin, she went with colleagues. It wasn't just her. When she showed up to speak to these guys, the base commander tried to tell them that, sorry, you can't have access. You don't have authorized clearance to look into this and speak to some of these witnesses. I mean, I think she's like a boss bitch because, you know, she said apparently on this podcast, you don't tell Congress that we don't have the authorized clearance, especially members of House Armed Services Oversight and Judiciary, which is where she's from.
Yeah.
So, yes, ma'am. You know, she put her foot down.
Come on in.
Yeah, so she finally got in, spoke to these pilots who obviously have seen weird shit. And apparently they told her some stuff, but it's all super classified. She says, quote, I can tell you, based on my investigations, not in a classified setting, that I absolutely believe that these things that are advanced technologies are not of human origin. I think if she's going on this podcast, we need to get her the fuck on Eavesdroppin.
Oh, yeah, let's reach out.
This is my thought. Let's reach out to Anna Paulina Luna.
And Philip Mantle.
Yes, I think she's a chitty-chatty kind of lady. She also went on to say that she thinks the Trump administration will soon declassify what the US government knows about UFOs and alien encounters.
Will they?
I don't know, but I wouldn't put it past Trump, really. I mean, look, he's trying to take Canada. And when he's finished with that, maybe
Let's not talk about that man right now. My God.
But maybe he might open up, all the black books. You never know.
Maybe. He said he would.
Now, in other things that have caught my eye this week, not alien related.
Oh.
It's kind of more supernaturally, but I did see something about Stonehenge.
Oh, we always love something about Stonehenge.
Exactly. So I thought I'm just going to shoehorn this in.
Do it.
I have to say, in all the years I lived in the UK, I always wanted to go and never went.
You never went. Oh, we'll go.
Have you been?
Yeah, many, many times. I drive past it quite frequently when I'm visiting my friend in Somerset.
Oh, I would love to go. Can we do that?
Of course. Do you remember I went with an eavesdropper?
Who?
She hired a car, which is a friend of mine as well as an eavesdropper. Hi, Linda. Love you long time, Linda.
Oh, my God.
That was the day we drove right up. We drove right up to everything. We drove right up to Stonehenge.
Buckingham Palace.
We drove right up to Bath, right up. While she was here, we drove right up to the British Museum. She drove right up to Kingston Shops, even though it's pedestrianised. And she drove right up to Kensington Palace, where the royals actually live, because she just drove right up.
Aussies do that.
She drove with such kind of confidence that they were like, come on in, madam, who do you want to see? She said, oh, I just want to see the palace. And they were like, oh, you're in the wrong place. Get out of here. Get out. Oh, my God. Go back.
That's the thing. We're a driving culture. Aussie's just where's the parking? Oh, good on her. I do love her. Oh, hi, Linda. Shout out. Well, we will go to Stonehenge because I've never been. And now I've got even more reason to go because, like I said, Stonehenge, it's back in the news. And there's a scientist that has thrown out a theory that Stonehenge, it's all about the D, Geordie. All about the D.
Oh, the Dicky Doodahs.
The Dicky Doodahs.
Okay.
So Stonehenge is basically, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, I'm sure our eavesdroppers do know, but it's a load of massive stones in a circle. And it's been standing for what?
More than that, Michelle.
5,000 years, yes. But nobody knows exactly why it was built.
Well, Linda is she's kind of a historian. She's all about the archaeological stuff. She went to Israel and did some archaeological digs out there.
Wow.
And she told me some stuff because she's an educator. She told me some stuff because we also went to Avebury Stone Circles, which were incredible.
Wow.
Incredible. What a vibe that place has. She told me that they're the tops of ancient civilizations, that they've been buried. I think that's what she said. Forgive me if I've got it wrong, Linda. I know she listens.
Do write in, Linda.
Do write in.
Do clarify. Well, in the article I read, they're saying that Stonehenge is kind of one of archaeology's biggest question marks. But there's a professor called Terence Meaden, who is an archaeologist and retired physicist from the University of Oxford. And he is chucking out the theory that Stonehenge is a phallic temple.
Well, I've heard that one before, yeah.
So he reckons at the heart of Stonehenge, there once stood basically a giant stone, 8.5 foot tall penis.
God.
AKA, like I said before, the D, the willy, the dicky doodah, the schlong, the trouser snake, the wanger, the pork sword, the yogurt slinger.
The what?
Yogurt slinger.
Oh my God, I've never heard that one before.
Disgusting.
The blue-veined, purple-headed custard chucker.
Oh my God, where the hell did that come from?
Oh my God. Oh my God, we're so immature.
It's honestly,
it's just a willy.
It's just a willy. I love the 12-year-old me. Anyway, yeah, he thinks basically the whole stone circle was around this massive schlong in the middle. And he reckons that this monolith is known as Stone 67. It looks nothing like a big massive penis right now because it's lying half buried on its side. But Professor Meaden says he thinks it once stood as the most important spot in the structure, right in the centre, and before it toppled over, because it supposedly stood directly on the solstice, fucking hell, braces, solstice axis.
Okay.
The solstice axis, which means it lined up perfectly with the summer solstice sunrise and the winter solstice sunset.
Right.
So basically, you've got this massive penis, perfectly anatomically shaped, with an 80 centimetre bulbous tip.
Oh.
Now, 80 centimetres. I was like, it's big.
That's a big bulbous tip.
That's a big bulbous tip. Just a tip. And he thinks it could actually be basically a fertility temple that celebrated the solstices.
Right. Well, that makes sense, because, the ancient British Isles folklore, they do love a cock. Because there is the giant of Cerne Abbas, isn't there?
Well,
do you know what I'm talking about? That big chalk outline of a giant, and he's got his Dickie Dido on show as well. And I've heard, and we've talked about it before, I've heard that women who are trying for a baby will go and sit on it.
Oh my God.
It's just like a chalk outline. It's just a drawing on the ground. But, they say that they actually say that it was a giant.
Wow.
It's the actual outline of a corpse of a giant.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, look, archaeologists apparently have not found any other phallic standing stones on Salisbury Plain, which is where Stonehenge is. But they have apparently found smaller carved penises from around the time of Stonehenge's construction.
Like mini models.
2 miles away. So, look, maybe there is something in this theory. I don't know.
I like it.
But I'm going to end on a quick last story for you.
All right.
Sort of going off for the back of your story about the telepathy tapes.
Oh, okay.
Because there was a story in the papers last week. I say papers. It was online. I did not have a physical newspaper in front of me.
No,
Who even does
do
that? Anyway, there was a story about how scientists have discovered a way to unlock telepathic abilities, which they say these abilities are trapped in everyone's brain.
I like it. I love that. I think that's the truth. I think my dog is psychically communicating with me all the time.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I've seen little sad eyes sometimes, let me out. And I'm like, come on, out you go. What they're saying is everyone is telepathic. We just don't know how to do it. Researchers in Canada have discovered parts of the brain that are acting as a psi inhibitor, and that's PSI.
Yes.
Which means there is a part of the brain that is actually suppressing
I love this.
the natural psychic, telepathic, and clairvoyant abilities that people have.
Makes so much sense to me. I get this.
And so psi means telepathy, which is mind-to-mind connections, clairvoyance, which is perception of future events or distant objects, precognition, which is knowing what will happen before it happens, and psychokinesis, which is moving objects with your mind. So somehow these clever scientists, with this theory of we all have it, it's just that it's been switched off or suppressed, they have managed to turn it on.
Wow.
In a group of like human lab rats, basically, by inducing, quote, reversible brain lesions in the frontal lobes of volunteers.
I don't like this one bit. You know what? It sounds like the show I'm watching at the moment, Severance. And I won't say any more because it will be a spoiler, but fucking hell.
Yes.
No, don't mess with the brain.
But look, the volunteers were like, yep, all right, hit me up. And when they did that, when they turned off the filter, it did boost the volunteers' psi abilities, which, quote, allowed them to influence objects with their minds. That's a quote from this story.
Wow. So they could move things.
Yes.
That's crazy.
So when you think about it, right, so the idea of psychics or people with special abilities, like psychic abilities, it's been around forever. But what they're saying is instead of thinking that these people have something extra, what this study is saying is that we all have it. It's just that it's switched off. And this Canadian scientist, Maurice Friedman, obviously has tested this idea and concludes that everyone is psychic. It's just we're blocked. 108 people recruited to do this.
Amazing.
Split them into 3 groups, and then each group got repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is called RTMS. It's where a non-invasive device, so I guess maybe just stuck on the head rather than like totally in the brain, was used to send magnetic waves to specific brain regions on different parts of these volunteers' brains.
I still don't like this. I would not like this to be done to me.
Well, the thing is that RTMS, this repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation, it's actually used to treat things like depression. It is a therapy.
Oh, okay. So it's like electroshock therapy, which again, I would not like.
I think it's a nice way of saying,
yes.
Yeah, that.
That's what I thought.
I know. But the scientists in this experiment used it to disrupt brain activity. So with the 3 groups, one group received this treatment on the right medial middle frontal region. Another received a placebo. I mean, I kind of think I would have preferred that because it sounds scary.
Or just don't put your hand up in the first place.
Yes. And both of these RTMS zappings did not change the volunteers' brains because neither group saw any change in their psi abilities after RTMS therapy. But the volunteers who received RTMS on their left medial middle frontal region saw their psychic abilities really dramatically increase, very noticeably. Apparently, they developed the power to change the outcomes of a random event generator.
Oh, what?
With their minds.
Oh, my God.
They could do things like move the arrow on a computer screen, which was choosing zeros and ones at random. They were in control of it.
Oh, my giddy aunt. That would be quite something, wouldn't it?
If these experiments have actually unlocked something really fundamental here, Morris, the scientist, thinks that the left medial middle frontal region may be suppressing more than we know.
God help us.
And that these findings are potentially, quote, transformative for the way we view interactions between the brain and seemingly random events. Basically, all of this could, quote, significantly advance research in the area of PSI,
yes,
helping to bring this phenomenon into the realm of mainstream science.
It's almost like we're getting an upgrade. Forget AI, we are the future.
We fucking are the future. But I just don't know that I'm comfortable with...
The brain tapping. Yeah, I don't like that either.
Lesions on my frontal lobe or whatever they're going to do.
No lesions. No carbuncles and lesions. No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Oh, gosh, Michelle, what a lot to take in. I do love today's episode. It's been quite exciting getting back to UFO land.
I know.
Yes. Listen, before we go, because I know that there are 3 things that we have to say in a moment. Before we go, I just want to remind you guys once more, don't forget to rate, review and subscribe because that really helps us.
It does. It helps other people find us. And of course, tell your friends, tell your family. But when you rate and like us and review us, yes, people out there who don't know who we are find us too, and we would love that. So thank you. We love you as well.
We do love you all. And meanwhile, it's time for us to say those things which are, wherever you are,
whatever you do,
just keep
eavesdropping.
Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping. Dropping. Eavesdropping. Dropping. Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping.
Dropping. Dropping.
Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping.